Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anurag Srivastava. I work for ING Commercial Bank in Amsterdam. My background is IT, and I set up first Hadoop cluster within ING Bank, and that's how I started working on Hadoop around 2 years back, and I fell in love with this technology. The title of my presentation is that Hadoop security features that make your risk officer happy. Before I go further with my presentation, I would like to do a quick poll here. How many people are in this audience who are risk professionals? Can you raise your hands? Maybe one or two. How many people are hardcore IT? Okay, good. And how many people are business? How many people are deeply concerned about risk? Good, good. Nice. So what you see is that this whole Hadoop wave, it's really driven by the business and technology people. And what I saw when I started implementing Hadoop, that you are constantly in discussion with risk people. And sometimes you are not able to fulfill their requirements, and that becomes a kind of problem when you are implementing these kind of systems. If you look in the market, if you Google about Hadoop and security, you'll find that this is a well-known issue. Some very, very senior data analysts have said that security for Hadoop, don't look at it now. Even in a very recent article in Tech Republic, they say that CIOs still don't care about Hadoop data security. And in fact, pie chart, which might not be very well visible from the back seats, here also you can very clearly see that the Hadoop security or the robustness of Hadoop security is the smallest concern among all the concerns. That is the orange part of the pie chart that you see. So in my presentation, I'm going to cover the three things. First of all, this whole paradox that a Hadoop is a system for enterprise, and then there's a lack of security in it. Then I'll tell you that what are the security requirements about Hadoop in a typical large financial, not Hadoop, but general information asset operational security requirements. And then I'll cover how the Hadoop community is slowly trying to address those needs. And then I'll conclude my presentation after that. Okay, so so security for Hadoop, we can as we go back in time, we will find more and more serious concerns about Hadoop security. So the good news is that it is being addressed now. What you see is that the Hadoop is making inroads in enterprise. I think today in the keynote presentations, I think we heard enterprise word almost every 2 minutes. Everybody was talking about Hadoop for enterprise. And of course, it is a very attractive technology. It lets you save cost. You can analyze all kind of data. You can expose that data to diverse set of users. But at the same time, the concern remains that if this technology is so important for the enterprise and all that, then how about security? Why it is not secure? And how can you start using it in the enterprise if the basic security concerns are not addressed? Now let's look into the operational security in the enterprise. Now these requirements, they are not very specific to Hadoop. Whenever you bring any system in a company, any software system, whether it's ERP, Oracle, or anything, you have to answer all these questions that come from the risk people. These are the general requirements that are applicable to all those systems. The requirements that are covered in bold, I will cover them later in coming slides. But let's look at the other 4 things which are not highlighted here. The application state monitoring. You would like to make sure that whenever the configuration of your application changes, you would like to monitor that. You would like to do security testing on your application. You want to do static dynamic code scans. You would like to have a good patch management for your application so that you maintain nice history of the patches and so on. You want to do the backup and restore. You would like to bother about that when you bring a new information technology in your company. Okay, so moving further, let's examine the 3 most important things that become a kind of a burning question in the context of Hadoop. First, what is user access management, the security management monitoring, security event monitoring, and the data protection. When you talk about user access management, I think you all will be too familiar that in a large company, especially if you are in a corporation which has got maybe 1,000 to 5,000 plus people, then you have to really think about privilege groups. The generic accounts, you want to have non-personal accounts, you want to separate DTAP, you want to have separate administrators from other users, you want to separate business users from IT users and so on. And also, for many things that you're doing to your system, you want to apply 4I principles. So whenever you're trying to make change to some critical settings, you want to make sure that two people do that together so that nothing goes wrong. The second thing that is very important is security event monitoring. Now here, when you bring a new system in the enterprise, you want to make sure that the specific events are monitored. So if the login attempt has succeeded, you want to monitor that. If it has failed, then you want to monitor that. Unauthorized access to a table, you want to monitor. Sometimes you also want to monitor the operational performance of your application. Somebody might try to intentionally bring down the name node and disrupt your entire analytics process. And when you are able to capture all these events, you want to send those events to a master control room. Because generally, large companies, they have one master control room where all the applications are monitored. So you would like to do that. In all the organizations, you have information asset managers, and they would like to be notified whenever a security event takes place, when somebody tries to access a system for which he is not authorized to. So this is the security event monitoring. Then moving further, the third most important aspect is data protection. Now, when we talk about data protection, we talk about three things: the confidentiality of data. You want to make sure that only authorized people are allowed to access the information. The integrity is very important, that you want to make sure that the data in the system is accurate, it is timely, and it is not tampered by the people, And I think these integrity requirements are very important if you are involved with the SOX compliance and those kind of things. And the last is the availability. You want to make sure that you are able to deliver information to the people according to your SLAs. Let's go a bit further in the data protection part. If you want to do data protection, then what can you do? Now, depending upon the criticality of your application, you can take different kind of measures. I think basic protection that you have in a system is log on. So you log on using username and password. You have access control. You can define that this group of user can do this, that group of user can do that. You can have malicious code protection, security event monitoring. You might decide to encrypt everything. To ensure the integrity, you can use the MACs, the authentication codes. You can also have something to make sure that you can have a kind of a data lineage, so you know that where this data is coming from. Now, these are all the requirements that you will face when you are implementing Hadoop in your organization. And what you see is that when you are doing the Hadoop implementation for data lake use case, then security really comes under spotlight. Because what we are doing here is that we say that we are building an enterprise data store. We bring all the enterprise data in it, all the semi-structured data in it, all the unstructured data in it. We give access to everybody, the data scientists, the marketing people, engineers, and all are having different motivations behind using the system. And when you have a data lake, you also want to be concerned about how long you want to retain the data. There could be some legal requirements to do that. There could be some company policies to do that. So long-term retention of data. What you will also find is that when you have this particular use case, then you will also get different kind of workloads. So some people might need information instantly. Some group of people would say that, well, I'm happy to have this processing done overnight and so on. Now what you'll find is that as the more and more data comes in data lake, as the data lake gets filled, the value of data grows. Now, as the value of data grows, it becomes also a very attractive target for the users, for the users or hackers. And what you see that, what you'll find is that if you don't take right measures to secure the data, and we go to business and to managers and say, well, we would like to implement data lake, then most likely that effort is going to be shot down because you're not secure. So if I would like to ask from the audience, what is the biggest data breach you know about? Target, Sony Online, Home Depot. I think last 1 year we have heard about a lot of companies where we had data breach. So data breach, data security breach is real. It is happening. And also, if you think that it is only outsiders who do it, you're wrong. It also happens by the inside people. So when you want to secure these systems, you have to look at the outside attackers, but you should also not forget about possible inside attackers. So let's see what happened that so when you do data lake risk assessments, you'll find that everybody takes very, very conservative approach, and you get the highest risk rating for data lake projects. And in our ING terminology, it is called 442 or something like that. 4 is the highest classification for confidentiality. I is the for integrity. 4 is the highest classification, and A is for availability. So you get very high the risk rating, and because of that, you have to take a lot of measures to prove that your system is really compliant. Now, let me take back you to my presentation last year in Hadoop Summit in Amsterdam, when we were setting up the play area big data in ING. So we started with a small experimental project. We set up a small lab, and we were showing people how cool Hadoop is, how quickly you can analyze your data with that. And eventually, when this project is successful, these POCs are successful, then they have to be bought in production. And that's where the real problem starts. And that's where the real questions about security are asked. Now, our lab setup was very, very simple because we had a small group of people. We had very few stakeholders. We put all these systems in a closed environment. We created strong perimeter security, and that was enough. And the cluster was accessible to a small, trusted group of users. So around 18, 20 people, and they were the only ones who could gain access to the system. And this lab-like security works well for a small group of people, but if you are in a large company and you find that this experiment is successful, then you'll find more and more customers or internal customers, they are interested in using it. And then comes the question that how fine-grained your security is. So now, if you look at that, and if you don't solve these security problems in a proper way, then you will create a lot of islands of Hadoop. My Hadoop, marketing Hadoop, sales Hadoop, service Hadoop, and that's what you don't want actually, because the idea behind bringing Hadoop is that you want to consolidate everything in one system. So let's see what is happening. What happened with Hadoop? Initially, when Hadoop was invented, the security was not the prime concern because they were analyzing only public data sets. And the access to these systems was to a trusted group of people, so nobody really bothered about security. And of course, initially in Hadoop, there was no data at rest encryption. The Kerberos-centric approach, which Hadoop took to security, the authorization was very, very limited because HDFS is built upon the normal Unix file system, and they just copied that security model, which was mostly insufficient for business people, for business scenarios. And also, there were so many things, so many technologies and protocols which are being used to manage the security in Hadoop, it gets very complex. And when you can configure so many different things, then you can also make mistakes, and then possibly that will also lead to the data security breaches. So to me, like that's where the contradiction is, that one side, it's a nice, great system for the enterprise, but unless it is secure, the adoption of Hadoop is going to get slowed down. It's like an architect comes to you and says, well, but I have built a beautiful house for you. Yeah, you can move in that house, but the locks are not there. Yeah? You put everything there, most valuable things there. Sorry, but locks will come 6 months later. You will not move to that house. So security is super important when we talk about Hadoop at enterprise scale. Now, I think this particular concern is also known to the Hadoop community and also to the large vendors in Hadoop community. And in last 1.5 years, a lot has happened to address these concerns. Now, what you see is that there are two major initiatives from two big players in the Hadoop area. One is Hortonworks, and they have three solutions: the Apache Ranger, Knox, and Falcon to some extent. And then Cloudera is having the Project Rhino and Apache Sentry. Let's look into these solutions briefly and see how they really help you in your organization to pass the risk audits. Now, the Hortonworks has got Apache Ranger, and the Apache Ranger kind of unifies the access control list in Hadoop. So they offer you a complete role-based access model. It's a pretty fine-grained model. It has got a nice central interface. Using this central interface, you can manage your access. The authorization works for some key technologies which are used by the people very often: HDFS, Hive, HBase, etc. It has also got nice compliance controls, so you have good audit logs which you can use and so on. So I think it is a step in right direction. Keep in mind that whenever a vendor provides you these kind of solutions in a large enterprise, they have to integrate with what you have already got. So unless these solutions provide you a kind of API-based interface so that you can integrate these solutions with other systems, they are not sufficient. And in case of Apache Ranger, they have done a good job because it offers you APIs to integrate with other systems. So that's a very good development. What is missing at this moment is that so far what they have done in the area of Apache Ranger is more from the consumer point of view. So all the applications that are being used by the consumers of data in Hadoop, they are being secured with the help of Apache Ranger. And here we have Hive, HBase, HDFS, and Knox, and Storm is also included. And I expect that in the coming period, considering the speed of innovation in Hadoop world, they are going to cover other applications as well. So this is a very promising development, and also think like this, that if you have to do a kind of risk profiling of your Hadoop system, then most likely you will say that first I'm going to secure the consumers because that's where I'm going to get many people and I want to protect that part, and then I'm going to secure the data ingestion pipelines and those kind of things. Now, Apache Ranger goals, I think these goals are also available on Apache website. And it's very clear that they want to have a central security administration. So from one place, you can do security administration. They offer you fine-grained authorizations. So you have users, you have roles, you have groups. So you can nicely segment who can do what. And this is one way to implement authorization for all the Hadoop components. So once you have Ranger console, you are familiar with it. You can be assured that all the components of Hadoop are going to be managed with that. And it also offers centralized auditing of user access. The auditing is very, very important in large organizations because people always want to know that what's going on with the system. So it's important that we have a nice audit trail in this. Now, the second thing that is very interesting is Apache Knox. Now, Apache Knox is a kind of a gateway that sits between your Hadoop cluster and between the consumers of your Hadoop data. Now, Apache Knox works very well with Ranger, and it exposes certain services with the help of web to the end users. So what you could do is that with the help of Apache Ranger, you can say that I want these people to access this particular service. And then all they have is a kind of a curl-based interface, and using that interface, they access those services. So what you can do is that your Hadoop cluster, you completely seal it, and then just give a small gateway with the help of Knox. And using that Knox gateway, people are going to access your service, and that is the place where you have your control. So using that control, you can decide whether people can access those services or not. It's a very good solution if you have a large number of users and you just give them access using this Knox software. Now, the third part is the Apache Falcon, and Apache Falcon addresses the other side of this data pipeline, because one side you have the consumers, but at the other side you are pulling data in with the help of data pipeline in Hadoop. And in Apache Falcon, they have got some good features that will help you convince your risk people that I can do the data lineage here. I have data pipeline audit logs. I can enforce data replication retention policies. And I can also do end-to-end monitoring of data pipeline. Now, all these things, they really help you pass these audit and the risk assessments pretty early. Now, Hortonworks is one player in this game. The other major player is Cloudera. And they are also quite busy in addressing the security issues in Hadoop. Now, what Cloudera is doing is that they have something called Project Rhino. And the origin of this project goes back to the time when the Intel did not take stake in Cloudera. And Intel was working very hard on their own distro. And they created very strong data encryption capabilities in Hadoop. So if you look at Project Rhino, there are two things in it. We have Apache Sentry. Now, Apache Sentry is somewhat similar to Ranger because they are trying to address the same problem, the unified authorization, and also making sure that we have a fine-grained role-based access. But if you look at in terms of maturity, then you'll find that Apache Ranger is much ahead as compared to Apache Sentry. I think where the Cloudera excels is in the data encryption part. And that's where they have done a very good work. And what they offer you is the encryption capabilities of data at rest in Hadoop. And not only that, they also offer you key management framework so that you can manage the keys and all that. So that's very nice. Now, goals of Project Rhino, there is some overlap in these efforts. So one side, the data encryption is not there in the efforts of Hortonworks. But at the same time, when you look at the authorizations and these kind of things, there is an overlap between Sentry and Ranger. And I think in case of Hortonworks, if you want to implement the encryption and all that, then you have to go for some third-party solutions. I think DG Secure is probably one of them, and so on. So the goals of these projects are very, very similar. And what you see is that in Project Rhino, that they call it compliance-ready encryption and key management. So all the data can be encrypted. It's not only HDFS, but also the logs can be encrypted, metadata can be encrypted. And they also offer you enterprise key management. They have a Cloudera manager, these interfaces to manage it. They also have audits. And very interesting part is that they have support for hardware security module, HSM, those hardware that basically provide you the keys and manage your keys and so on. Now, this is nice, but in large organizations, you will find that they have got their own department that takes care of the key management and the key distributions and so on. So even if they provide the solution in their system, somehow you have to integrate it with what is available in your department. And I think those who are very familiar with enterprises, they know that I word is the most difficult word, integration. That's very hard, always. So if we look at this, that there's a good progress in the area of security. I think it really helps to have all these the features available to convince your risk people that I'm going to bring all the data in data lake, but I can also secure it in a proper way. And it's going in the right direction. And now comes the key question that can you make your risk officer very happy with this? I would say that you can make risk officer happy, but not very happy because a lot has to happen yet. But still, I think as compared to 2 years back, I think we have come really far ahead. We have a lot more to offer, a lot more to prove that when we set up Hadoop cluster, data lake, then it's going to be secure and strong. So if you look at the three things that I talked about in the beginning of my presentation, the user access management, I think the time has come that we have strong user access management in Hadoop because you are going beyond your lab setup. You are rolling it out to the rest of your company. And I think that role-based access is pretty good. Of course, there are few applications at this moment covered by it, but I hope that more and more applications are going to come in the scope of role-based access. The audit logging is much better now. So we have the security event monitoring, that requirement. And I think audit logging is present in Ranger. Plus you have all kind of lower level logs, which you have using Log4j and these kind of things. So the logging is pretty good. Now the data encryption is something that where Cloudera is very strong with their Rhino project. And that's something you have to think about whether you want to do that or not. Because the data encryption in Hadoop has its own penalty, because data encryption means your system gets slowed down because data has to be encrypted, decrypted. You have to manage the keys and so on. So you have to make a decision whether you want to do it or not. How many people would go for data encryption in Hadoop cluster? Yeah. Why?
We need it.
Sorry?
We need it.
You need it, yeah. I think that the data encryption is useful because, as I said, at this moment, the threats are not only outside threats. When it is quite possible that somebody inside your organization is going to steal the data. Yeah. So you might think that, well, I have secured it very nicely from outside, nothing is going to happen. But what would happen if somebody who has got access to the system is going to hack it? And I think that's why you need encryption as well inside the organization. But ultimately, it is a business decision. You decide about it on the basis of what kind of data you keep in the system, and what is the potential that if you lose that data, what is going to happen. So this is about the data protection part, and you can make a good decision around that. So I feel that this is the Hadoop security is going in good direction. There are some overlapping efforts of vendors. There's a lack of complete coverage at this moment. The another challenge is that the different vendors have got different kind of commitment to open source. So for example, Hortonworks puts everything in Apache open source, so you can just start using the technology. But Cloudera has got a mixed approach, so sometimes their solutions are in open source, sometimes they are not. So if you choose their solution, then you bring some kind of proprietary stuff in your company, which you might or might not want to do. So this brings me to the end of my talk. And if you have any questions, then I'm open for that.
Have you implemented a full cycle of the security approach, one of them, in your organization?
Not yet. Yeah. We are busy with that. I think we have not implemented the full security. As I showed in the picture somewhere in between, that all we implemented was like the strong, the perimeter security and all that. And now we are taking the next step in which all the role-based access and those kind of things are going to come in picture. Yeah, because these developments are also very new. We started with Hadoop in March 13. And at that time, nothing was there. Yeah. More questions?
Yeah. Regarding data lineage, for example, did you look at Cloudera? I think it's Navigator. It's supposed to do that. I don't know much about it, but
yeah. No, see, we made a choice in 2000. Actually, when we set up our POC, we started with Cloudera. After POC, when POC became successful, we realized that we have to build a lab kind of environment. So then we chose Hortonworks. Now the reason behind selecting Hortonworks was not about security or something, but we thought that we want to go with a vendor that has got full commitment to open source. And we saw that in this company there are many committers, so they are going to drive the innovation. And that's how we decided to go for Hortonworks. So the moment we chose Hortonworks, then we stopped looking at Cloudera completely. Yeah? And that's how it went. So I'm not aware of Cloudera Navigator. We never evaluated it. No.
You mentioned the 5 goals of Ranger. When do you expect those to be implemented within the product?
Sorry, 5?
You mentioned the 5 goals of Ranger, including centralized security admin.
In fact, many of the things that I have mentioned in my presentation, they are already there. So if you download the demo version of HDP 2.2, you have got a nice Apache Ranger interface. And in that, you can secure all these 4 or 5 products that I talked about: Hive, Storm, HDFS, and I think HBase. So it's all there at this moment. Yeah. More questions?
Is ING considering using network isolation instead of using NOx? It could be easier.
Yeah, the network isolation instead of NOx. With network isolation, you mean putting firewalls and those kind of things behind it, huh?
So if you isolate the Hadoop cluster behind a secured network,
yeah. So I think that that could be a good approach for a large company like us. Then we say that, well, we isolate the cluster using network isolation, and then we open a very little gate using NOx for all the users. And this isolated cluster, there we give access to only trusted users. So we don't do any encryption, anything over there, just leave data unencrypted. And only a small set of people can get access to it. So I think that that's an approach that I really like, because that way you can really give access to large number of users to Hadoop. Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about key management when you're doing encryption?
Okay, that's not my specialty. So typically, I think I can tell you how it works in our organization. If you need a key, then you have to go to a department, and that department is going to give you a key, and the public key and the private keys, and then you have to make sure that you bring them at right place, in the right systems and so on. And then we have also got very strong procedures about the key renewal and refreshments and so on. So I think we have a process in place, and that's what I know about it, because that's not my specialty area. And something similar we have to do for Hadoop. If we have to, we are going to do that, yeah.
Did you implement the Active Directory integration, and if yes, any challenges that you faced? I was wondering.
About Active Directory, I'm not very sure. Maybe one of my colleagues knows about it. Anybody from do we have Active Directory integration? Do you know about that, Mike? Yeah.
At this moment, we're working for a solution for integration
okay.
with AD.
Okay. More questions? One more here from the gentleman here.
It's one thing if software says it does audit logging or something like that. The other thing is if the risk manager asks for proof. Are you aware of any audit of these Ranger software or Reno or something like that?
Yeah, you can give the proof. This really works. So you can.
It's telling. I believe you. Are there
yeah.
any written documents that any external company ever audited it?
No, not that I am aware of. No. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Okay.
One question, do you use Kerberos as well?
Yeah.
And how was the integration in your platform? Was it difficult or easy?
That's no, I wouldn't be able to tell much about it, whether it was difficult or easy. I did not really dive into that. All I know that we used it, but I'm not aware of it, whether it was difficult or easy. If I look at the setup of Kerberos, it's not a very simple, but if you follow some steps, then you can do Kerberos setup. Yeah. I think somebody was asking a question over here.
I have a question about patch management. How do you do patch management, or other way around? Is Hadoop providing security patches on a regular basis?
See, in our the previous implementation, as I showed you before, that I think I'll just go back to that picture, then you can see that. Yeah. So here, if you see that in this site, we had these shared services. So basically, we make sure that any kind of new libraries or anything that comes, it comes through our shared services, and then finally it comes into our Hadoop cluster. So this is the path we have followed to bring any kind of new libraries and so on. And this area, shared services, whenever in this area a new library comes, then it is scanned for any kind of the vulnerabilities, the dynamic code scans are carried out, static code scans are carried out, and then those patches are put in the system. Okay, is there any more question? Okay, so if there's no question, then thank you very much and have a nice day.